All right. Welcome to the Ultra High Net Worth Clients Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Broadhead. Today's incredible business owner guest is Dan Khabie. Dan, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, Chris, nice to meet you. Real pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show. I think to kind of kick off, I'm a Midwesterner trapped in a Lebanese body. It's the best way to think about me. My parents are from Beirut. My dad's from Syria. My mom was from Beirut, and they came to the United States in around '67. And we were raised in a town called St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, where I was born. So I grew up as normal Midwesterner, but with Lebanese flair. And I think that's the entrepreneur in me. I think as a young kid, I'm one of five. I've always wanted to build businesses and build companies. I was always that kid out there just trying to hustle and build things and make things. And then I got tripped across this thing called the internet. I
hmm
ended up starting my first company when I was 23 years old. I sold my first company when I was about 10 to 12, 10 to 15 years later, and joined a huge. I sold to a big conglomerate called WPP, which was one of the largest marketing services company in the world. And then I ran an effort to take my company, which was called Digitaria, and merge it with 19 other companies and acquire a bunch of companies. And we formed a business called Mirum, which was a global digital technology company, and built that up. And it was about 2,500 people, roughly, 56 offices, 27 countries, traveled all over the world. And, for me, I miss being an entrepreneur. So at the brave age of, I think it was like 44, 45, I decided to leave my corporate job, which was great. And I had no problem with that, an amazing experience, to start again in my garage and start a new company, which is today it's called CourtAvenue. So that's kind of my quick story.
Wow. Okay. Lot to dig in there.
Oh, lot to dig in there.
Yeah. So you said you started your first company at 23 or sold your first company at 23?
Started my first company when I was 23. Yeah, started my
Started at
first.
23. Okay,
Yeah,
great. So was that after college?
right after college. Yep, yep.
Okay,
Showed up in
cool.
college, went to school back east. Me and my girlfriend, which is now my wife, decided to head to this place called San Diego, which I never heard of my entire life. I thought San Diego was like, I mean, growing up in Minnesota, I thought the West Coast was like a practical joke. They played at Minnesotans during the winter. Like I didn't think the Rose Bowl was like a real thing. I thought they just did that to kind of ruse us. But
hmm
I headed out this place. I headed out west, and my brother ended up becoming he did his residency with the LA Lakers, LA Kings, LA Dodgers, at the Current Joe Clinic. And he's like, Dan, how's like front row seats to the Lakers game? So I'll be out there next week. And my wife had been to a place called San Diego. I've never been there, and she's like, let's go. So we went to the West Coast. We went south, and we hit the border. We turned around. We exited this street called La Jolla Boulevard, which is now called La Jolla Boulevard. Did I know that? And started our life. And I ended up actually getting involved in infrastructure and tech. And then this guy was building these things called websites. He's like, Dan, we build websites. Like, what's a website? He's like, those are the things that are going to go through the pipe that you're laying down. He goes, you should come join us. You have a marketing degree. You're in tech. Like, you should come join us. So I joined that company, and I learned about building websites for about a year. And then my faith had it. My brother-in-law and a couple of guys had built a company called Razorfish, which was one of the top digital agencies in the world. And they got this thing going like really early on. And they're like, Dan, you should come out east and see what we're building. So I headed out east. I fell in love with it. I'm like, I want to build that in Southern California. And so I left there and got a bunch of guys together and girls together. And we started a company called Digitaria when I was about 23 years old.
hmm Oh wow. Um, so it was you built websites
Yeah,
was
built
the
websites,
service?
mobile applications, yeah, all that stuff. It wasn't mobile at the time; it was websites at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay. So that was most people probably didn't even know what websites were at
No, no,
that moment,
we were slinging websites. People were like, "What's a website?" Like, just trust me, it's going to change your business. I started getting into it, and I realized like technology would change the way in which we behave. Like, I was thinking to myself, "Wow, if I can go to a website and learn about a company, what can I buy from a company?" So at a very early age, I saw the massive potential, and I knew that I was in for a career, not just a job, but like a career. I could see it. I could see that it was going to change the way we communicated as consumers, the way we purchase and shop, the way we connected with friends and family. I saw that very early on. So I was really excited about jumping into it. And I wanted to be on the services side because I wanted to learn about companies. I have an acquisitive mind. I want to learn about businesses and companies, what drives them, what motivates them, what scales them. And so I really enjoyed the services side because you get a chance to peek in all these businesses. And we had such great clients to begin with, you know?
Hmm.
And I've had a chance now to work with every client from NBC, CBS, Fox, DreamWorks, Qualcomm, Intel. I mean, United Healthcare Group, Kia, Hyundai, Ford. I mean, Rolex. I mean, you name it, iconic brands. And that's the best thing about what I do is you get a chance to look into other people's worlds and learn about business and learn about what motivates consumers and how they sell their products and how they market them. And it's amazing. So it's kind of the background.
Hmm. That's amazing. So were you building the websites yourself?
Yeah, well, we had team. I mean, at that point, I had like a tech person, I had a design. So
Okay.
like the company was like a tech person, a design person, project manager. You know, we had all the. I kind of believe that every business is a team sport, and
Yeah.
you need to kind of be honest about where your weaknesses are and where your strengths are. And a lot of
Hmm.
entrepreneurs I believe a lot of them will say, "Hey, you know, a great entrepreneur understands where people sit and where you sit and where you play best." I think entrepreneurs get stuck in like, hey, I've got to do everything. And it's great. It's a great lifestyle world. It's a great way to build a lifestyle for yourself. If you really want to scale a business, you gotta give a little and you gotta take a little and you gotta find that in between. And so I'm very much a partner guy. I'm a point guard. I like to dish out the ball. I'm not afraid to shoot the big shot when it's time, but I'm a distributor and I like to team with people. And my success is completely driven by all the talents and all the people around me.
Hmm. So I have found in my own entrepreneurial journey and interactions with other entrepreneurs, learning that every business is a team sport sometimes takes years or decades. How did you know that from such a young age?
I don't know. It's a good question. I think it was forced upon me, you know, because I wasn't a designer, I wasn't a technologist, I wasn't these things. And even though I probably could have learned some of those things, because I've always had a good kind of mind to kind of do things and hands on, I kind of felt that I would never be great at it. So my theory is I've always kind of lived my life where focus on the things that you're great at, get better at, and the things you're not great at, just outsource or have it be a hobby. And I just kind of knew that as a very young kid. I don't know why. It was just very instinctual to me that my life would be driven by surrounding myself with the right people that can ultimately help me grow. Because I have always saw myself. It was funny. My brother, who's 3 years older than me, you know, he's basically a genius. You know, I mean, I always tell people like the dumb doctor in my family went to Harvard. That's where the dumb surgeon went. And you know, the other one who is just a genius was 3 years old. He would always read books and he would read them constantly. And it drove me nuts because he wouldn't play with me. So I would steal one book and you have another book. I'd steal one book and you have another book. I'd steal like hundreds of books and you keep reading different books. I'm like, I said, you want to know something? While he's reading books, I'm going to focus on reading people. And I think at a very early age, I got out into the streets of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was out there talking to people, messing with people, putting people in uncomfortable situations, putting myself in uncomfortable situations, and learning about human behavior. And I think as a result of that, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about where my strengths are, where my weaknesses are, what I'm good at, what I'm not. And I learned a lot about kind of my own self identity. And that was really important at a young age because it helped steer me into really being honest and sincere about what are the things that I care about, what are the things that make me who I am, and what makes me unique and makes me different, and then how do I then surround that, and how do I have flames around that around people around me. And so I think at a very young age, as I was good at that, I played a lot of team sports as well, and I always kind of believed in team sports as a way to kind of. I've always been good at building team sports and team games, and I've always been in that situation. So I think it's just more of a natural instinct, but it's a learned behavior over time, you know?
Hmm. Awesome. Awesome. So you start this company at 23, you're going to build websites. How are you finding customers and convincing them to work with, what they probably think is like a middle schooler?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, I think number one, I've always had a lot of confidence, probably too much confidence in myself, but I've also had a lot of humility. And there's a fine line between confidence and humility. There's a balance, and I always tell
Hmm.
people I've never ever met anyone smarter than me, and I've never been smarter than anybody else. And that's the balance that we all can learn from one another. We can all grow together. And I think for me, when I was out there pitching clients and talking to people, I really had in hand and kind of talked about what I'm seeing out there, and they talked about what they're seeing out there. And then I kind of told them, listen, my job is to bring you the right people and the right talent. I think I have the people. And so we ended up really cold calling people, reaching out to people, networking, doing all the kind of blocking and tackling. And I love that. I like street fighting. So I'm very much I'm a street fighter kid. So I like everyone said go, everyone ready to start go and just go find your way in the doors. I'm the guy that tries to find his way in the door. So that's kind of what I do really well.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm sure when you started, it was just kind of like any business would do, but did it eventually evolve into focusing on specific types of businesses?
Yeah, I think I don't think we focus on any type of business. I liked having diversity because what I found was that diversity in clients can be reapplied to different places, and you bring them a level of excitement. I call it fresh water. You bring them fresh water. If you narrow down an industry, you end up creating a pond, and the pond eventually gets murky. It gets disease infested. It gets tired. No one wants to swim in after a while. I also believe in fresh water. So I'm constantly in this mode of what can I learn over here? What can I learn over there? And how do I apply it into the clients I do business with? So for me, it's all about bringing fresh perspective. So I never really focus on one industry. I focus on many industries, and I took what I learned across those industries and brought it into other places.
Awesome. So did the growth of Digiteria, did it come from just finding a ton of clients to give websites to, or did it come from expanding to other services eventually?
I would say that it came from expanding into services. One of the big for us was we were doing more design UX strategy work. And then we bought a technology, we merged with a technology company. And then we did that merger, it allowed us to kind of start building our capabilities, right? And then we ended up building data into the business. We built other skill sets into the business. So I've always been in the business, the mindset of kind of landing and expanding. How do you better service clients with more? And that's been my strategy. So how do you land and expand? And that was through our career. So if you looked at our business, it was definitely an evolution. We started here, and then we kind of went to here. And then for me, the journey was ultimately just how good are we? Like, how good are we? We built this company in San Diego. We were one of the top digital agencies on the West Coast. We wanted to see how good we were, and we ended up, going out there and putting ourselves for sale, and we sold ourselves to one of the largest holding companies in the world. And that was a great moment for me because I tracked them and I watched them my entire life. And, to me, I was like a kid in a candy store.
Hmm. Nice. How old were you when you sold to
I
WPP?
think I was 35,
Okay.
five,
Wow.
yeah, like that. There's 6.
35. So 12 short years later.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe it's a little more. I forget, but in that range. And
Hmm.
that was a big moment for me because, um, I had a chance to. One of the things interesting that I found about myself, being a Midwesterner trapped in a Lebanese body, is what does it mean to be in a Lebanese body? And until you really travel the world, you're living in Barcelona, Spain, and I think about myself, and at the time I was doing a lot of work in the U.S. and I was doing a lot of international work. And I really wanted to kind of see the world and see how I fit into the world. And at some level, when you join a global network, you get a sense of identity. It forces you to better understand yourself because you meet people from all over the place. And that was an amazing moment for me, was to also become a global citizen, was to be thrust into. I was no longer Dan from Minnesota. I was in San Diego. I was Dan from Beirut. That's how they looked at me because I looked the part. And so they're like, man, this dude's just like, he's one of us. And that was a crazy experience to go from like this kid in the West Coast all of a sudden being thrown into the world of international business. It was a crazy time for me.
Oh, wow. At what point in your career did that occur? You were
As soon as we sold the company, we're in our buyout for like 4 years. And then after that, we came up with the Miram concept. And then as soon as we came up with Miram, they gave me the CEO role, and that was it. The rest is history. I was on the plane, and that was it, man. I was gone. Shot out.
nice. That's awesome. Okay, so it sounds like your experience selling Digiteria kind of opened your eyes to the world of and M&A roll-ups, all
Yep.
that. Is that accurate?
100%, 100%. And I think, your market is, financial advisors, right? I mean, that's who you communicate with. And I think it
Mhm.
was interesting, that to me, just kind of speaking to your audience 1 second, was that, it's interesting as an entrepreneur and getting the mindset of an entrepreneur as a financial advisor is that you never build a company to make money, right? Like we never build a company. As a matter of fact, when you make money in a company, it kind of feels like it's the end of the journey. It's a weird feeling. It's kind of like, okay, I made all this money, but my job over? Is like my journey over? Or is it just beginning? And a financial advisor's role at the end of the day is to help guide us to the next chapter. And as I was going and I was building Digitaria, I spent a lot of time. I remember interviewing 4 to 5 financial advisors and really spending time with every one of them and really trying to find someone that could guide me. And so to me, that moment in time when you get the check and you're like, wow, made some money, and who can help me and who can guide me is a really critical point. And so when I think about your world and the importance that your audience plays into journeys of entrepreneurs, it's kind of interesting. They kind of connect. They connect together. Because a lot of entrepreneurs are like, oh, I can manage my own money. I can do it myself. I'm good with finance. Because at that point, you've learned the hard knocks of like running a business. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, you get too emotionally, too connected to it. So you get blinded. So having partners that can guide you there becomes super, super, super important. And so I think that journey from being an entrepreneur and then selling the business and that in between moment is an unbelievable experience. As a matter of fact, when we went out there and we started buying companies, I would tell the founders, I said, listen, as soon as I buy you and you get that check, call me up because I want to hear your voice and the excitement you have when you got it. And then what I want to do is I want to guide you for what I learned and advice that I saw
Uh,
doing what I did. And you can take it or leave it, but I'm going to give you some of my advice and what I learned along the way. And that's what bonded the Miram group together is that we all helped each other along our journeys, which I thought was
mhm.
really cool. And again, like
Yeah.
advisors play a really critical role in that work. So
Mhm.
it's interesting when I think about that, the dynamic of the way our two worlds interact.
Mhm. Awesome. Uh, two-part follow-up question. How did you decide on which financial advisor you were going to work with, and what advice did you give your founders that you acquired their companies?
Yeah, so I think like two things I'd say to you is that number one was you go with kind of referrals first. Like, hey, you talk to your network, what's worked with, and this is a common thing. What you'll see is like I'll get texts all the time, 5 guys. Dan, one of my buddies just sold a business. Who are you using to run your money? Boom, that's number one. Number two is what happens is I ended up deciding to hire a point guard. I wanted someone on my side of the table that was not a financial advisor, but was almost like a CFO. Because when you sell your company, you lose your CFO, you lose your team. So I
Mm.
hired my own CFO that like almost like someone that has a family office background that worked with me to then interview a bunch of different advisors. And at the end, I went with a group called Yankee Dowling, which is now sold to a bigger business. And I went with them because they just had a high touch mentality. They really walked me through in English how the world works. So they really gave me a lot of transparency through the process, and they helped me think about what does my next chapter look like and help me plan for the next chapter. And if you look at that playbook, if you look at what we laid out and what we executed, unbelievably on point. And that means an entrepreneur, you have to have a lot of discipline. Because when you make a lot of money, anyone makes a lot of money, entrepreneur, they want to go spend it. They want to buy the Ferraris or cars or float the right. So like going back to the advice to the people that I sold the business, I tell them, don't touch the money. Don't touch the money. 6 months, do not touch the money. Don't
Mm.
do anything about it. Leave it in your account. Don't run with it. You just sold your company. You're going through a mourning process. You letting go of your baby. Take time, let that process heal. Think about it, go through the motions. Then at 6 month mark, what I tell them is go out there and do your homework. Go talk to people, do your research, slowly dip into things because everybody knows when you make money, there's like a you made money hotline. And so everybody calls you. And so you got to be really careful about how you deploy cash and who you deploy it with. And then I think the third point of advice is that as a hire your point guard, like hire someone that can run alongside you to help you make good decisions. because your decisions are always going to be emotional because entrepreneurs are generally very emotional. So you have to be super smart about who's with you, who balances you out and making those right decisions. So that was some of the advice I gave people, and we went back and forth about it. And it's super fun to kind of watch all these entrepreneurs. I love when people are ring the bell. I love it. There's nothing that makes me so happy. So I just love it, because
Yeah.
my parents didn't have anything, and I built my life up, and and I think it's just great to watch people achieve great things, man. It's amazing.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like your parents did something right. You got a bunch of wonderkind running
No,
around.
we're really fortunate. We're good people. We're raised with good spirit around us. I think the biggest thing for us was to have a lot of love and a lot of humor. And I think the
Mhm.
combination of both really worked well. We're constantly laughing. We're constantly out there doing things. Had a lot of love. And my parents allowed us all to be who we were. Right? We were never the same. We were never the same people. I mean, this is a great story to give you a sense of the family I was raised with. My brothers. I'm one of five. Everyone's done really well for themselves. You hear each one of their stories. It's pretty impressive in themselves. And in school, they're all really good. I was never really great at school. I was the kid. I was like playing sports and never wanted to pay attention to anything. And my mom, we were all sitting at a table, and there's like all five of us are sitting there, and my mom goes, Dan did something. We all got our grades, and she walks through our grades, and she goes, Dan did something none of you has ever done. And I was like, what? It's impossible. Like, we're A+ students. Like, what can have done? My mom stands me up. I remember she puts her arm around me. She looks at her. She goes, Danny is the first one in this entire family to actually get an F-. And she goes, Dan, tell them what you did to get F-. I looked at everyone. I turned around. I pulled on my pants. And I said, I mooned the teacher. And that's how I got an F-. And and then my mom, she didn't beat me up. She didn't ground me. And we just laughed. And that was it. And that's how we kind of lived our life.
Yeah. Man, that's a really great mom there, you know. I seeing what's important to you and what you're good at and just celebrating like your wonderful spirit.
Yeah, and it's funny. I tell people this, like being a parent now, and we all make mistakes. We can all do a better job. But I think our number one job as a parent is to protect our kids from us, because a lot of parents will live their ambitions and their hopes and dreams to their kids, and I'm guilty of that.
Mm,
A lot
mhm,
of people are guilty of that, and we put that on our kids. We want them to be a mirror of things we didn't achieve, or wanted to achieve, or wanted to get to. And our number one job as a parent is protect them from us. All right, that's our number one job. I think
mhm.
that my parents did a really good job of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, and they yeah, they clearly did a great job. So, talk to me about Mirum. So, you sell Digiteria. How do you find good acquisitions, and then how do you convince them to be acquired by you?
That's a great question. It was that was an interesting moment. That was that whole. There's no handbook. What's funny is, like, when you run a global company, and they give you a job, you're like, okay, so what's the handbook? Like, how does it work? There's no handbook. I'm like, what do you mean there's no handbook? How does it work? Just go do it. And I mean, that was like a crazy, like, you're kind of like, well, I'm just gonna go do that then. They're like, okay, just go do it. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go. They're like, yeah, go. Okay. And as soon as I got the green light where they're like, just do your thing, I just went ballistic, man. And for me, that we had a great acquisition team. So we have an M&A team that's put together that specializes M&A. They look at tons of deals. We narrow down those deals based upon a couple of criteria, one of which is, who's the strategic fit for the business? Do they add value in certain regions? And number three, do we like the people? And if you look at those three things, you start really honing in on who are the right companies for you, who are the right companies for the regions, the leaders, and the service offerings. And once you're done there, you then get into the conversation of the buyout. And it was funny, because I would say once I became corporate, I became the hunter of entrepreneurs. I became the guy that is out there hunting entrepreneurs, looking for them and finding them, connecting with them. And for me, it was a great moment because I got a chance to meet so many great people. And I think the way it worked for me, and I think why it worked, is I was so in love with all of them. I was so in love and intrigued by their businesses and what they built and how they built it. And I was so impressed. I mean, every time I was like, wow, how did you, I never thought of it that way. I mean, it was almost like every time was like, I met an entrepreneur, I was like asking them a bunch of questions. Like, are you trying to buy me? Or am I trying to buy you? Like, what's really going on here? I think that kind of like, that kind of playfulness, I think was number one. I think number two, I'd start the conversation and I'd tell them like, do you want a blue pill or you want a red pill? You take the red pill, I'm going to show you how to max out your buyout, but you're going to destroy everything around you. Take the blue pill, you're going to have a good earnout. You'll hit maybe 60, 70% of your total value, but you're going to retain your company. What do you want to do? And everyone else said they wanted the red pill. That's what they are. They all want the red pill. They all want to go and fly. And when you want to go after the red pill, you got to learn on how to achieve that and how to do with minimal damages. And we were able to help everyone, all the partners, think through how to better, how to really enhance their experiences. And I think that's what really sold them. I think what really sold everyone that we had a playbook. We ran a playbook that made us successful, that we maxed out our earnout and our buyout. And we were able to share that with the rest of them, what we learned. And we believe that if we made all these entrepreneurs millionaires and they got all their money, that when they decide to stay with us long term, that they're staying because they want to be there, not that they have to be there. And that was a fear that we went after. So that's the way we ran it. And that's what brought together. And you win some, you lose some. Some people just get great deals and you're just like, I'm talking to them on the line. I'm like, go that way. Great. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, there's this great company out of Utah that I was really into. Great piece of, they got a great offer. And I'm like, I love you guys. We'll see each other in another life. Go that way. And I would actually talk with them about their deals. I would actually then at that point, they would then ask, like, I would have a conversation with them about how to structure the deal with the new company. So that was really fun because when you get a chance to go through the experience I had, you just learn a bunch of stuff. You don't realize it's actually valuable. And you're like, oh man, I can share this with you. Now that we're not, let me tell you what to do to really kind of enhance that. So I think that got around. People knew that that's how it worked, and entrepreneurs reached out and we got connected, and it was a part of the mojo.
Wow. So I think to distill everything down to what you're saying is like, just regardless, deliver value.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think you got to deliver value in everything you do, right? Like however you do.
Yeah. That's awesome. We've worked with a couple financial advisors that specifically focus on acquiring other financial advisors. They're like, they don't even focus on finding new clients. They're just like, I just want to acquire as many books of business as humanly possible. And they're like, once we reach a certain valuation, then our or a certain amount of assets, then our valuation goes from 3x to like 5x or 10x. And I'm like, do you ever tell like the advisor you're acquiring this to convince them to sell to you? like, hey, sell me your practice and it'll be worth, double or triple what it's worth right now. And he's like, no, I never thought of that. And like, there might be some regulation against that. I haven't looked into it enough, but I've always thought like, what a killer, angle to come at that with. It's like, join, roll up with us, like still maintain a certain equity, but then the part that you sell and will triple in value, 10x instead of 3x. Right. So I don't know, just felt compelled to share that with you.
Well, now you're entering to our new company, CourtAvenue, which is that's exactly what we do. So we do.
Okay.
I mean, it's that's the playbook, right? It's you build great service offerings, you bring together entrepreneurs, you combine service revenues, and you get higher valuations, right? I mean, that's a financial arbitrage that you're talking about, and that's a playbook it's a PE playbook, right? Like it's a typical PE playbook. It's how it runs and how it operates, and it's interesting because when you're in that world of acquiring things, you got to be really smart about culture. You got to be really smart about who you bring together. Like People think about this, they fantasize about, I'm going to buy a bunch of companies and roll them up and we're going to be super successful. And we're going to take we were 7 times, now we're going to be 15 times. And, we're going to, right. It's a whole, that is not real. What's real is you bought a bunch of shit. You have to make sense of it. Did it work or doesn't it work? Are they committed or they're not committed? Do they work the way I like to work? Let's go through the ups and downs. We bring all their baggage with them, ex-wives, husbands, partners, everything comes with them. And you got to sort that out. So I think that you have to, I think one of my biggest strengths and the biggest thing I tell people is you have to have a lot of patience and a lot of tolerance. If you don't love people and love all the shit that comes with every one of us, you're never gonna be able to survive a deal like that. Because if you want everyone to be the way you are, rigid or not rigid, or organized or not organized, or the way you expect the world to be, you will get incredibly frustrated and you'll end up just losing it, not making it to the end. That's why roll-up strategies generally fail, because it's super hard to keep the people together and the teams together. Super hard.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like of all aspects to evaluate in an acquisition, is culture fit the most important one?
I think so. I think culture fit is the most important. You cannot overlook culture fit. If you overlook culture, if you look at the numbers, I've seen so many times where the numbers look amazing and the people just don't. And you're like, you get so sucked into the numbers that they become so great, you want to bring it in, but it never really fails because the people weren't the right people for your culture. Right for them in their world, but they weren't right for the world that you're building. So culture is king. I mean, if you, I mean, right away, if the culture isn't there, the chemistry is there, you walk out the door. You can't, don't rationalize, oh my God, but they're successful and they have this new product. And my God, it makes money. Like, not worth it. Life is short too. Like, that's the other thing too. Money is an interesting thing. Success is an interesting thing. Like, success is really dependent on how you view success, right? Like, what is success? What the hell does that mean? I mean, I would make an argument that you're talking to one of the most unsuccessful entrepreneurs you've ever met in your entire life. That I could easily make easily.
Okay.
And the reason I'd make that argument is because if you think back to when I started my company, I missed some of the biggest innovations in the history of this planet. I mean, I missed them, didn't invest in them, thought they're stupid, didn't think they'd work. I mean, I can go on and on and on about how I used to yell, how I think Google is the dumbest thing, and Facebook. What electric cars, are they really going to work? Like, what's AI? Like, who needs that? Right? I mean, I can go on and on and on. So, like, you make an argument that I'm the most unsuccessful entrepreneur you've ever met in your entire life because I missed so much. And I don't mean like I was reading a newspaper, miss it. I mean, I was in the industry around them, miss it. It was like you finding Google, like, Dad, I got this cool thing. And I'm like, Google's terrible. What a terrible name, right? So, like, success is so personal and it's so relative to how you see yourself and where you see yourself. And people get blinded by that when they're doing acquisitions, buying companies. And, it's so easy to get blinded by yourself. And so I think chemistry is the most important thing in any business setting.
Are there any tangible objective strategies you employ to evaluate an acquisition in terms of culture fit before moving forward?
Spending time with their team, very tangible. What is their net promoter score? Very tangible, right? Do people like them? People not like them? Whether they refer them to other people? Very tangible. Retention, client retention, very tangible. So it's a great sense of what's the culture like, and what are people sticking to, or are people fleeing from it? And I would say the other thing that's really tangible is spending time with, if they have partners, each individual partner, and see how they respond when you're with them individually. When you're with them individually, what do they say? We really dig in and understand why they're selling. Are they running to something? Or are they running away to something? That's a very important thing to understand. Are they running from something, or are they running to something? And so those are the things that I use to kind of guide me.
Awesome. Cool. So, so you're running Mirum and just meeting all these fascinating entrepreneurs, and also, if you love meeting people, hear their stories. You and I are obviously very similar. That's basically why I started this podcast. A podcast is a great way to scratch that itch, because most people who I invite to my podcast are like flattered, and then they talk to me.
Yeah, no, it's smart. I totally agree with you. It's a great idea. I mean, podcasts are great, right? I mean, you and I having a chance to meet and get to know each other, and now we do, and it's a great way to connect with people. I totally agree with that. It's really great.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's, I think you and I are cut from the same cloth. Like, this is like my favorite part of the week. Like, I getting to
Wow.
talk to someone, fascinating and who's lived an incredible life, such as yourself. This is awesome. Like, like I get to do this you know, for free.
And I feel the same
Um,
way. It's great to be on the other side of it, right? It's fun to be able to talk my story, and you might hit on something that someone might pick up on, and they're like, "Oh, that was interesting." So I love that.
Yeah, 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 and we're creating this incredibly dynamic, easy to consume, engaging content. It's like, my goodness, what an insane win-win-win.
Well, if you think
Um,
about it, and this is what's going on in media today, right? Like, I mean,
yep.
what are you? Are you a network? Are you a channel? Are you like Channel 9 on cable? What's cable, right? What's satellite? What's streaming? I mean, the world of, I'm in the world of media, as you know, is like the world's changing super quick. So I'm always intrigued with talking to people and hearing, kind of watching your style and how you interview and the questions you ask and the market you target. So I learned too. Like, I learned because I get a chance to do a lot of podcasts and I get a chance to, speak out there, and I just love hearing people. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, you'll learn that I wing it. I ask questions that I am curious about.
Yeah, it's great. I love that. Love that.
Awesome. Okay, so you're managing Miriam, meeting a ton of entrepreneurs. Do you eventually exit from that and start Court Avenue, or
Yep.
where's the
Yeah, yeah.
walk
So,
me through that?
well, I'll walk you through that. So, I mean, a couple things. WP was run by a very big, prominent figure in the marketing advertising space, pretty aggressive guy named Martin Sorrell. And he was never kind with entrepreneurs leaving, and it was always the thing, kind of getting out of there. And kind of I watched that, and he had left. He had some challenges. He'd left the business, and I kind of felt like it was a moment for me to take off. And I'll never forget the moment I was walking in some like mall somewhere in like Minnesota, and like I saw the news, and I called my chairman. I'm like, listen, I'm out of here. She's like, what do you mean you're out of here? I'm like, it's over. I'm done. I'm like, what do you mean you're done? I'm like, I'm leaving. She's like, why would you leave? I'm like, it's just time for me to go. And literally, I'm not even kidding you. Literally an hour later, I get a call from my brother telling me that my dad's sick. And then about 60 days later, he passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And yeah, thank you. And that was interesting because, when I was talking to, at the time I resigned, it was so close. It was like literally an hour later when I heard about my dad. And so the company, WV, didn't think I was leaving. So they basically kind of said, Dan, like, okay, you just lost your dad, take 6 months. I'm like, no, guys, I'm leaving. They're like, no, it's just, your dad was sick and you're not going anywhere, and don't worry. And I mean, listen to me, like 15 resignations later, I left. And the reason why is because they knew that I loved what I did. Like I created this thing, I created Miram. And they knew that I loved it so much. And every time I walked in the office between that point in June until December, they just assumed I wasn't leaving. Because if you talk to me, I understand you'd think I wasn't leaving because I love it. But I was really excited about, my next chapter. And the new chairman calls me up and he says, Dan, he's like, I really want you to stay. And I really considered it because he's a great guy, great leader. Would love to work with him. It was my chance. I was working I was dealing directly with the top of, this is 150,000 people. I mean, this is one of the largest marketing service company in the world. And I was basically at the sun. I was at the top with this guy. And I'm like, oh man, this is amazing. But, I miss being on the street. And I think the biggest thing for me was when you work at a big job and a big corporate job, you learn how to say no a lot because you live in a world of saying no. You have to go to Hong Kong, I have to go to Dubai, I have to go to somewhere in Thailand, I got to go here. So I can't be everywhere all the time. So you got to say, no, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. No, I can't. I was in the business of saying yes my entire life. I'm a goal scorer, not a goalkeeper. And I miss being on the offense. I felt like being on the inside was too much on the defense, managing up and managing down. And I miss just being on the offense. And and I think the other thing too is that when I sold my first company, my kids were still young. And so all they knew was a life of of living of when, we made money. And they never saw me struggle. They never saw me build a company. They never saw me build a business from scratch. And so I wanted to do that. I wanted them to watch me build a company. I wanted my kids to watch me build something from nothing and have them learn from me directly. And that was another driver. And I think finally, I just miss being on the street. I'm a street kid. I want to be on the street, man. I want to be the underdog. I didn't feel comfortable being a big CEO. I felt comfortable being the guy that you underestimate and we go into a dogfight. That's who I am. And it was hard to leave. It was really hard to leave. You can imagine I had amazing perks. I had a great company. I got paid really well. I was at the top of the top. I was at the top of my game. And to leave that, you lose your identity. You leave your identity behind. That was a really crazy moment for me because like all of a sudden I'm out and I'm like, who am I? Like, what do I had a 1 year, I had a 1 year not competing on stations. I was on the sideline for a year. And that year it was a moment in time of grieving my dad. I'm trying to find myself. We sold all of our possessions at one point. We had nothing. We're living with my in-laws. I'm not even kidding. Literally living with my in-laws until we got into our new home. And like we had nothing. And it was interesting as an entrepreneur, I think when you make that next transition, I think you have to burn everything down. And for me personally, I had to burn everything down in order to kind of rebuild again. And I'll never forget, I was walking with my wife and she says to me, she goes, Dan, it's time. And it's time for you to go. And that was my moment, man. When she said that, I was like, okay, I can go now. It's time. And I remember going into my garage. I clean everything out. I take all the kids out of it, take all the shit. I call them, I said, guys, within the next 3 hours, someone's going to move, take all this stuff, take what you want, put it somewhere else, but it's going. And then about an hour later, I hired someone else to come in to take the entire garage and make it all white walls. And I sat there at the desk. My kids all wrote on there. They all wrote a message for me, which was an inspirational message for me, all of them. And I had to do it in Sharpie so I couldn't erase it. And I sat in that garage with no air in the middle of the summer, sweating to death, with a elliptical to my left, a desk in the middle. And I just sat and looked at that wall. And that was the beginning of the development and the creation of what is now CourtAvenue.
Mm. Wow. Man, that's hardcore.
Yeah. I'm like that. I'm like that. It's the way I work. I'm very much like going into those moments and living it and really, really living. It was fun because even back then I was thinking I should just videotape this whole thing. Like I should just videotape like what's going through my mind. And I tried to, and I was like tired of it. I'm like, forget it. I'm focused on business, But it was funny because that was a great moment for me. And people who were in there will always come up to me like, man, like Dan, like that garage moment was insane. Like people just talk about it, What I do is, so what happened was I'd write in the room, I'd put like 5, 6, 7 ideas down. And I'd call up people that I knew to come in that knew about those 7 ideas, whether it was pharmaceutical or tech or engineering or software. And I'd have them come in and my wife and I would create a menu of breakfast. And I'd send it to them beforehand and we'd cook them out of our kitchen. We'd make eggs, French toast, whatever they wanted. And they'd walk into this hot, sweaty garage. Like they're used to seeing me in this huge office, right? Like overlooking the Pacific Ocean. They walk in, they come in with suits and ties. They walk in my garage, sweating, uncomfortable, and they just stare. They sit there and like they have like lukewarm eggs in front of them, and they're just like, "Fuck's going on here, Dan?" I'm like, like it was like that feeling, and I just loved that. I love that feeling of grinding it out, and all the people that contribute to me in that garage.
Yeah. Wow. Man, you don't do things halfway, my friend.
Yeah. No. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just assume everyone does that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. No one does that.
Yeah.
You are unique and amazing and energy. I won't even say person. I won't even limit you to a human body, my friend.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, it was great, man. And I always tell people like with a tear in my eye and a pen in my hand, man, that's how it started, because you
Yeah.
went through a lot of emotions back then. It was a really emotional moment for me. And I remember sitting there and like, man, do you still have it? Can I do it? Like, do I still have it, man? It's like an athlete. Like, can I still get there? And
Mhm.
it was crazy. It was a crazy time.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. And I know we're coming or we're actually past our time. Are you good to continue for a couple more
I
minutes?
got just a couple more minutes because I gotta get out of here.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Just real quick, can you share what Court Avenue is about and what you guys do?
The CourtAvenue is an amazing company. It was actually my business partner Kenny Tomlin came up with the name. He joined me in that garage. I have some great video footage of him when he came up with the name. Because we said, he goes, "There's a small town in Ohio. This guy takes concrete, pays the first road ever in America. And the physical distance A and B didn't change, but the actual distance did because of the paved road. You get there faster and quicker." He goes, "We should be in the business of shortening the distance between a brand and everyone it is they communicate with. And we're going to use strategy, technology, marketing services to do it." And the name of that first paved road was called Court Avenue. And that's where the
Wow.
and
Yeah.
and
Cool.
so since then, everything we've done, everything we've built has been about how do we better communicate from how do we help a company better communicate to their customers, both internally and externally? What are the tools? What are the technologies? What are the systems? What are the processes? How do we do that? And we have some great clients. So we run Kia.com and we're constantly looking at how to drive efficiency and creativity. We do work with the US Air Force, United Healthcare Group, Epson, General Mills, Hershey's, you name it. That's our core business, which is kind of a digital tech experience company. Then we acquired a business called Modify, which is our performance media company. And then we have another company called Gigantic Playground that digitizes theme parks. Think about Mario World or Universal Studios. I don't know if there's Harry Potter Land. They do all that digital work, like to connect the stick into the game, into the data. So I tell people we build these amazing houses. We get people to the houses and we throw the best goddamn parties in the backyard. That's basically our business. And now we have an office in
Nice.
we have a Latin America facility where they do work in Latam, but we also outsource work there. And then we're also building software. And so we kind of look at the clients we do business with and say, what niche software products can we create? My partner Kenny has a big background in software and tech. And so we actually create a lot of niche software products. So it's kind of like a mini WPP, where I came from. We applied a lot of the learnings from the big holding company and we brought it here and we self-funded this thing out of garage. And this year will be 130 people. We'll top, 30 plus million top line revenue. And we're heads down trying to build this business up and see if we can't, get another successful exit.
Nice. Nice. Well, that's very exciting, and I am definitely interested to keep following your story. I don't think you've even started to reach the end of this excitement. I have one final question.
Yeah.
It's an open-ended question. You can take it in any direction you want. It is, and you may have already kind of hinted to it with what you just shared about Court Avenue. What are you working towards?
What am I working towards? I work towards every day staying alive.
Mhm.
I think number one, I want to stay alive. I mean, really, honestly, I want to like literally stay alive. Like that's my like number one thing, which is try eating as well as I can. I try to be as healthy as I can. I try working out every day. I try to do those things really well. Like if you're not healthy and if you're not in mental capacity, like you can't achieve the other things. So like to me, just being alive and living life and being thankful for being alive. I think that's number one. I think number two, I think I'm working towards trying to find a better sense of self, like trying to get better myself. Like, how do I continue to improve and how do I get better as I age? Like, how does the game differ from me? I look at like Michael Jordan is like he's my hero. And I look at MJ, like when he was starting off, he can do through raw talent, the guy can just dunk on the people. As he aged, he learned the turnaround jumper. And he learned how to master that because he had to play with his body differently. His body couldn't do what he did. And so I'm trying to learn and now in my 50s, like early 50s, like how does my body change and my energy levels and how do I play the game differently? I'm trying to learn that. So I'm trying to be a better sense of self, like really understanding like how I can play the game differently. I can't do things I used to do and the way I used to do it. So how do I do it differently? And I think number three is like, how do I come to terms with my fire? Like, does the fire burn out? Is it always in me? Do I at some point does the fire go away and I just become like a regular schmo and I'm just hanging out like a normal, not thinking about every business and every concept. Like,
No,
you're right. What
no.
becomes so? I don't know, man. I think for me, I try to live every day for what's in front of me. I don't think too far behind. I don't think too far ahead. To be honest with you, I think that's why I sleep well because I don't think too far. Even though you see a lot of energy, and I've learned how to meditate. I've learned how to be really concentrated when I need to be, and I think for me as a human being, again, like being around my family, being a good role model, and helping people out where I can, and jumping on calls where I can, even if I have to push myself a little bit, is I just want to be a better person I was yesterday, and I constantly try to do that. You know.
Hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, that is undeniable. Everything you've shared about your story would indicate that you do that every second of every day. Dan, where can my audience find out more about you?
So you can go to LinkedIn, Daniel Khabie, find me on LinkedIn. I post a lot there. Go to CourtAvenue.com. You'll learn a lot over there. And I think just LinkedIn is a great place. If any of your audience is out there, you want to touch base on anything you heard today, or you want to ask some questions, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm constantly out there speaking and doing things. And anything I can do to help you out, Chris, or your audience, please let me know. If any of your financial advisors ever want to give them a call and be like, "Hey, that was interesting. Like, what else can I learn about talking to entrepreneurs?" And maybe host another podcast with me, just your audience, about like specifically the mindset of entrepreneur going into a transaction, and that itself could be its own podcast. But I just thought
Yeah.
about it, by the way, as those like talking to you. It's actually a really good storyline you should think about. But
Yeah. No, I would
but
love that.
anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. But anyways, nice meeting you, man. And I'm gonna go out there and hustle some deals and close some business and see if I can light up a room today, man.
All right. I love it, man. Well, Dan, thank you so much. This was an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you for the rest of the afternoon, but I will let you live your life. To all our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in and keep on growing out there, everybody. See you.